Hello everyone and welcome to episode number 61 of the danjohnuniversity.com podcast. Welcome back. Before I start answering this week's questions, I've been looking for this quote way too long. I'm kind of embarrassed about it actually. I'm not a big believer in rotational weight training. In fact, frankly, I think it's a terrible idea most of the time. And the rest of the time, it's probably a bad idea too. The cost to benefit ratio doesn't, at where I'm at in my career now, doesn't make any sense. And when I would do them in my discus throwing career, I never got anything out of them, no matter how much money I spent on these crazy pieces of equipment. And what I've been trying for the past 2 years to remember, this wonderful quote I had read and then never made a note of it, never wrote it down. But it's fun. I finally found it, and it comes from the May 1964 issue of Strength and Health magazine with one of my heroes, the late, great Tommy Kono, who not only was Mr. Universe, but won multiple gold medals at the Olympics, and he broke a lot of world records as an Olympic lifter. Pretty well-rounded guy. There's an article about high school strength training, which is kind of cool because in 1965 they were still battling against the myths about weight-trained athletes. The coach from this high school track team quotes Harry Paschal. Now it's interesting because he calls him the late, and now you look back. Interesting, by the way, this year I started lifting weights. So he, I don't know how long ago Harry Paschal died, but he says a good thing here. He goes, Harry Paschal put it, the strength of the lower back and hips determines one's ability to run, twist, jump, throw, or lift, whatever the particular sport requires. And it's interesting because, as many of us have discovered in coaching and in our own training, doing those basic exercises, the squat, the deadlift, the Olympic lifts, those seem to help you rotate the implement farther than trying to do these little twists and things like that. Am I saying they're a terrible idea? Well, I mean, when I talk to people about it, I've had conversations with Stu McGill on this, and we both agree that the suitcase carry, the one-handed farmer walk, is probably certainly safer and maybe even better than a lot of the nonsense we usually see. And of course, if you're snatching over 3 and cleaning over 4 and doing your suitcase carries, if you don't throw the discus far, I don't think the weight room's your problem anymore. Okay? All right, I hope that helps. So we have a question from Joanna, and it's a good question, and it's sad that I'm an expert on this. After playing volleyball all the way through college and now coaching it for the last 7 years, I've worn out my swinging shoulder to the point of needing surgery, rotator cuff and possibly the biceps tendon. My friend Chris just had that. You talked about surgery in previous episodes, but I was hoping you'd give some comprehensive advice for how to go into and come out of this surgery at my best, both physically and psychologically. No medical advice needed. I just want to draw from your experience. Some background, because you say it helps. I'm 32 years old, 5'6" and 140 pounds, and pretty fit. The surgery is set for the first week in November. This is my first surgery ever, or really any other kind of major injury. First off, hey, I'm so lucky to be an expert. I've had surgeries on, you can tell this one didn't take, 2 fingers, 2 times on this broken wrist to fix it, surgery on this elbow, surgery on the shoulder, surgery on my right knee, double hip replacement, belly button hernia. I'm sure there's others, I just forget. Hey, thanks, I'm an expert. Oh, worst injury in my career? Right here. Lori Wilson, she broke my heart. There's a couple things. First, if you can, go into surgery in fairly good condition. If your shoulder's bad, make this a time to, if you have machines available, get those leg extension and leg curls, squat as you can. I used to squat like this all the time during those, after the wrist surgeries and the elbow surgery. That's how I front squatted. You can work around just about any injury if you just put your mind to it. I would suggest going for walks, not for the conditioning of it, but there'll be some of that. But walking gets you into a nice little tune. I know you can't hang from pull-ups, and you probably can't. You just hangs on pull-up bars, and you probably, I don't know if you can goblet squat, but if for total body mobility, I would put the hang, the goblet squat, and just a simple walk, where you walk naturally, tall chest, proud, eyes up, not with your head in your cell phone, and just walk with a nice swing to keep everything, doing what it's supposed to do. If you can get in good shape, oh boy, that's going to help. If you can be in okay shape, that's going to help a lot. Going into the surgery, and this is going to get a little personal, and you may or may not think it's funny, but I think it is. Once they start putting you on a surgery like this, they're going to be putting you on some heavy painkillers. Painkillers have a tendency to block many people up. One of the great things you can do for yourself, I can't believe I can't sometimes when I talk, is maybe get yourself some of that orange flavored sugar-free Metamucil, and maybe have a fairly good sized dose, maybe in the morning of the day before you go in, and maybe another one, just to make sure your bowels are moving. Because I tell you, after a few days of no-go, you're going to be miserable. I made a mistake on my first total hip replacement. On my second, I got up plenty early and took care of business. It's weird to say that, but being in good shape and this little diet trick are good ideas. I have been told it's really a good idea to come in fully hydrated. Now, we all know the definitions of fully hydrated. It means some of the stuff I talk about, your urine is clear. It's not dark. And that's something that's probably a good idea. I don't know if you'll have time for this surgery to save any of your own blood. I understand many people do that with those big surgeries, but you probably don't have a ton of time for that now. But keep an eye on the basics of digestion and elimination. Come to it in fairly good shape. And then finally, and this is a hard thing for an athlete, do what they tell you to do after. When I broke my wrist, they gave me these little drills here, something like tabletop, this, boom, boom, boom. And my daughters used to make fun of me because I did it 24 hours a day. Yet Dr. Vanderhoof told me I was the fastest he ever had a person recover from the kind of surgery I had in my left wrist. Because I did what he told me to do. With my total hip replacements, I have found pushing the prowler, walking, pushing a prowler, and general kind of bodybuilding did more for me than all the little drills that they gave me. But I still did all the little drills. So get yourself a good PT, or I imagine it might be a physio in another country. I don't know where you're from, but get someone you can trust, someone who will listen to you, and someone who doesn't think you're 193 years old. They think you're 32 and you want to get back out there. If it says, if they tell you not to do something for 3 months, don't do that for 3 months. And when you do decide to come back, get yourself a total beginner's mind. In fact, it might even be a really good idea, Joanna, if I'm just saying, if you're always pounding with the right hand, why don't you practice your left side? I guarantee this, the way the brain works, that's going to knit things up nicely. So when you come back to your normal hitting hand, you might even have better technique when you left off. Hey, good luck to you, okay? And if you don't mind, ping me a note after everything's okay, and I'd like to hear from you. Thank you, and good luck to you. We have a question and comments from Stephen. With a busy school schedule and a limited budget, I have found that meal prepping is the easiest way to consistently eat well throughout the week. Yes. However, it often takes me many hours to prep meals on a Sunday for the upcoming week. Do you have any tips for preparing healthy, well-rounded meals that aren't terrible in a reasonable amount of time? Steve, you mentioned a limited budget, and some of my answers for me, I always buy at the place I shop over here at Macy's. They have next to the vegetable part is their deli, and they pre-cut up. I buy a couple of them, the fajita mix especially. I think there's 5, maybe 6 different vegetables in there. For sure, there's onions and 3 different kind of peppers, and I think there's 1 or 2 more. But I buy those because my thought is this: yeah, I can buy the peppers over there for $3.99, but these peppers are $1 more, but they've already taken care of it for me. So if you can afford to spend a few extra dollars on your vegetables so that they're pre-sliced, pre-chopped, you'll find that time-wise a massive improvement. I don't know if you use a slow cooker, but I found for myself that the slow cooker, it would, if you throw something in, I don't know if you can bring chili in your situation. It's a little vague, but if you decide to do a big thing of chili, a big thing of a thick soup, a stew of some kind, and let that sit over, I usually cook those 9, 10, 12 hours. Those, while that's cooking, you can be doing everything else. That's not even a terrible idea to make a stew and then go shopping. That's not a bad idea at all. So the pre-cut vegetables, maybe some stews or something like that saved us a ton of time. If you look at our traditional menu that we had when the girls were growing up, 2 days a week, it was always fast foods. Not fast foods, but steak, which you barbecue, and that's a pretty quick steak and salad. That you can flip that around in, I don't know, 10 minutes. It goes really fast. And on the other 2 days a week, it was slow cooked meals, and I tried to stack those opposite each other. And on the night I did the quicker meals, I prepared the stew or the jambalaya or the chicken noodle soup for the next day because I had that extra time. Another thing you might want to do is enlist some help. Get into a relationship if you're not, or find someone who's also interested in doing what you do, and just share the work, and it'd be really worth your time. If you are cooking things in large quantities, like you're cooking 20 chicken thighs for the week, that's going to help immensely. One other thing you might want to think about when you do the cost of benefit comparison of food, you'll find that a whole turkey is very inexpensive and rather easy to cook. And and by the way, it smells great while it's cooking, so that might be another idea. I know these aren't very good, but I tried. And your second question is, you have mentioned eating like an adult with whole foods consisting of mainly protein and veggies and avoiding your typical boxed or canned items. What are your thoughts on newer, healthier items you can find, such as pasta made out of dried edamame? Who would torture themselves with that? Or garbanzo beans? It's interesting because I just read an article about some research done on prepared foods, fast foods, and just how much worse they are for your body. That hurts the gut biome. It seems to give you a lot more calories. That's why we always, the old joke is, if it comes in a box or a bag, it's going to be on your bum for the rest of your life. I struggle when they put the thing health on any item. My parents were able to go through a very happy life and never one time have to figure out whether a food was healthy or not. Of course, this is also before the era of fast food and the food industrial complex. So personally, I wouldn't see any difference. I mean, if you're going to eat pasta, when we make pasta, we make it in very small amounts, and more like the Italians would. The actual Italians, not the little Italian restaurants you see here in Utah that are mass marketed, charging $8.99 for spaghetti. I mean, come on. Okay, I don't know if this helps or hurts, Stephen. These are good questions, but when we get into the area of nutrition, I sometimes stumble a little bit, but that's just me being honest with you. Thank you. Good questions. We have a kind of an interesting question from Dave. I have a question related to current and likely long-term limitations of what I have been advised to do. And there's an interesting story. In February of this year, at age 45, I had a heart attack. My brother-in-law had a heart attack at a young age too. With minimal plaque buildup in one artery, some plaque broke off, causing a blood clot, resulting in the heart attack. Well, Dave, I'm really glad you're here to write this letter. Thank you. Wow. Fortunately, the situation was resolved with a single stent, and there was some minimal damage to my heart. Oh, you're a lucky man. Anyway, my cardiologist has encouraged me to return to lifting weights with additional focus on cardio. Your cardiologist wants cardio. That's kind of a great little sentence right there. I am prohibited from doing 1 rep maximums, which is probably a good idea for all of us, really, due to concerns about the effect it may have on my blood pressure. I am certainly okay to lift at higher repetition range. So his first question is, with the restriction to more hypertrophy type workouts, am I missing out on benefits from low rep workouts? The benefits of low rep. Well, that's the beauty of what we do in the weight room, Dave. When you look at the work of Tom DeLorme and some of those other great researchers, they mostly had people in the 8 to 12 range. You could probably argue that the sweet spot for reps is that 6 to 13 range for most of us for most of the time. Absolutely true. If you're going to get ready for that Olympic lifting meet, you need to do that. Though I do think, and I've had some people tell me this, oddly, that doing higher rep, like things like front squats, really do a lot for an Olympic lifter. So that's a little counter to what most people are doing. I have tried this before. One of my teammates years ago had spoken to a very famous coach, Olympic lifting coach, and he said never do less than 10 reps in the back squat. 10 reps, that's pretty high. But and the idea is because the benefits of squatting are from the higher end. So I think you'll be okay. If you're on the university, you'll notice that for most of the workouts they are in the workout generator. The reps are higher. I really would hope you would consider the generator at least for a while and be tone it down and just be smart and safe. I do like the fact that your cardiologist has mentioned more cardio, because if you're doing 3 sets of 8, 3 sets of 12, and you're keeping a tight monitor on your rest periods, you're gonna feel your heart pumping. Now the nice thing is you're gonna feel your heart pumping, but you're not gonna go bleach red with your blood pressure going through the roof. We used to, I don't know why we're all alive, but we used to act on purpose, try to make our faces as red as we could on things like deadlifts, just for the fun of it. The folly of youth. You have a backup question here too. Finally, I've been working on increasing my 1 rep max in the bench, deadlift, front squat, and military press. Now that I can't do 1 rep maxes, is there a reliable way to relate a 6 to 8 rep max to a 1 rep max? Here's the thing, I hope you kept a diary or a journal. There are weird ranges for people. I was never a fan of that bogus Soviet, I kind of threw of that tremendous Soviet little thing with all the numbers. If you can do this, you should be able to do 95% for 2. Well, no, that's not true at all. Early in my career, I was a little bit more like some of the female athletes I work with, where my max would be my max, but I could get 10 reps with 90%. Well, because it wasn't my max yet. I was still working my way up to a big single. But I do find this, so what I'm getting across first here is that you might be in a situation where where your unique number set is going to be informative. My thought as I sit here with everything, why don't you just pick an 8 rep max and make that so if it's 225 in the bench press and you do that for 8 reps and 6 months later you do 245 for 8 reps, we can infer that you've gotten stronger. And that's all that's really about sometimes, man. Taking care of business. Hey, first and finally, I just want to applaud you for kind of jumping back in. And let's just remember, for you, safety first, okay? And so keep an eye on things. I wouldn't be surprised if in the next year or two, if you continue to go visit the cardiologist, you might be able to get back to almost fully normal training. I wouldn't be surprised, okay? Hey, I hope this helps, and thanks for sharing your story with us. We have a question from Daniel. What a lovely name. I work out between 3 to 4 times a week at the gym, park bench or Jim Wendler style, Jim Wendler 531, overhead squat, bench press, deadlift, and back squat. Would love to kickstart my metabolism for health and aesthetic reasons, as well as improving my work capacity. Please bear in mind that I'm 42 years old and he's what I call a quadrant 3 athlete, and haven't done a lot of walking, jogging, or sprinting. Maybe some introduction to such activities would have some value in terms of injury avoidance. The walking will, and I think the sprinting will. It's that middle one, the jogging, that I think will actually add to your problems. Just say. Usually, since I'm detrained in terms of running, sprinting, such makes me suffer from plantar fasciitis. Ouch. And that does hurt. I feel like you're walking around with a nail in your shoe. And I would love to avoid such by approaching this venture in a reasonable way. His series of questions. How would you approach 1 or 2 additional hill sprint sessions? What would be a reasonable warm-up routine? Funny we didn't. Would you approach the sprints similar to loaded carries, matrix yours? Some days 2 to 3 longer ones, some days 8 to 10 shorter ones. And many thanks and best regards from Berlin. From Berlin, okay. When it comes to hill sprints, when I first started coaching the hill sprints, I was a much tougher coach. But what I picked up over time, Daniel, and I think this is the key, it's the quality of the hill sprints I want you to focus on. I'd much rather you do 2 real, where you're just really going after it up the hill, and take your time walking down, and then another one. And by the way, one can be a good workout too if you have enough hill. 1, 2, or 3 loops. In the beginning, keep it at that. You're asking about warm-ups. The odd thing about hill sprints is you don't need a ton of warm-ups. I mean, I've never had an athlete get hurt sprinting up a hill because it's just very natural, and the hill makes you have excellent technique. Well, I wouldn't mind on this warm-up thing that maybe you walk, and here's an idea, walk a little bit before, up to 10 minutes, don't go crazy, and then maybe walk up and down the workout first for the hills. So if you're going to do 3 50-meter hill sprints, walk up and down 3 times just to get everything kind of lubricated. Really never really had any injuries, but that could be a nice little warm-up. And you'll also get additional benefits of that extra cardio. I live in a place called Utah, which is very mountainous. And when people first come here, even experienced hikers are like, oh boy, because all Utah hikes go like this, and then you come down. It's out my window, it is the Rocky Mountains. So out my window it goes like this, and then like this. And to get to the top of that hill, you have to go that way, which is logical, but there's not a lot of meandering. I like this idea. You note here too, on some days doing the shorter, 8 to 10, that's not a bad idea if you're thinking of 20-meter sprints. And if you are doing 20-meter sprints, maybe play around with the intensity. Let's say you're doing 8. 1 or 2 or 3 of them in those 8 should be all out. 1 or 2 in that should be very, just get to the top. Remember, even if you go slow up a hill, you're still going up a hill. So play around with the intensities. I always try to finish on the last ones because it's the traditional throwing, last throw, best throw. Always try to finish with your best one at the end. Daniel, that's a good question. And good luck. Good luck, and tell me what you figure out. Chris writes, a very common question, by the way. This past few months, I have been focused on trying to increase my press. My all-time 1 rep maximum was 70 kilos a few years ago at a body weight of around 80 kilos, which is way behind my bench press 1 rep max of 120 kilos. Pause. Yeah, but remember, it's much easier to go heavy on the bench press because The bench is your support system, not you. And of course the angles are different. My ultimate goal, which I understand I will likely take a few years, is a 100-kilo press. That's a good lift. Nothing wrong with that. So here's my issue. I'm following a Bill Starr routine of pressing heavy triples and weighted dips twice per week, and I've been progressing nicely, working up to 60 kilos for 6 sets of 3 last week. However, in 2 workouts this week, I failed to get a single rep with 62.5 or 65K. The curse of doing reps to figure out where your max is going to be. Boy, it's always a tough one. I just mentioned that in a question a few seconds ago. My sticking point seems to be just at the top of my forehead after I press the bar off my shoulders, okay? I remember this happening a few years ago, and it seems to be a reoccurring problem with my press. Any tips on why I can't press those few extra kilos? Yeah, because you're doing a lot of work at that 60 kilo range, which is great, but you gotta play around. That's why I got my press up to basically 140 kilos years ago. And one day a week, it was 3 sets of 8 with a minute rest. That's not very much. And the other day, I clean and press, just going up, practicing going heavier. The odd thing about that Friday workout is I don't think it ever went backwards because every workout was clean and press, and I was kind of playing around. I do have a few ideas for you, Chris. Both come from, one comes directly from my coach, Dick Notmeyer. After every jerk we used to do, and we'll get to this point too, but we would always do these little press outs like this to build up our overhead support. These little teeny, just minor arm bends. And it's weird because even as I do this now, I remember that feeling, those big lifts overhead, of how my scapula would come in tighter and tighter and tighter, and the bar would move into just a perfect position. I want you to add press outs. He had me do them after every jerk when I first started. So if I was doing a triple, it'd be jerk, press outs, reset, jerk, press outs, reset, jerk, press outs. That's a lot. That's a lot of time on the bar up there. You could do those at the end of each round. And with this issue here, we're going to get a lot of work right in this range, which is not yet your range, okay? The next thing I want you to think about is adding a little bit of leg drive and then bringing the bar down as slow as you can. A bit of a push press, push jerk if you know how to do it, and slowly bring them down. And when you get to the area that's sticking, just try to figure out if you can sense what's kind of falling apart in your technique or in that groove, and see if we can just figure out a way for it. Maybe down the line, try both things, and then if it's still getting stuck, you're gonna send me a video, and then we'll see if we can help you in any way. I don't know. Okay, thanks. Good question. We have a question from Ben. Ben, so like your European athletes, I can squat body weight 15 times easily, but can only get 5 body weight reps in the bench press, with specific training on a good day. Before we go too much farther, it'd be interesting to know what shirt size you have. If you're a 41-inch long sleeve shirt, I think we have an idea of the problem here. For the past couple years, I've been overhead pressing a lot and bench pressing a moderate amount. I like that. Easy strength helped my 1 rep bench go up 20 pounds with little effort, but the 10 rep max is stuck. The same is true of my kettlebell press, stuck at 2 reps with the 70 and 10 reps with the 53 for years, even after high volume ladders. I'm starting to see the same thing. You have a pressing issue. Besides the obvious press a lot, which I think is stupid, by the way. I get why Szymanski said it, but yeah, we can move on. What would be a good strategy to break the plateau in upper body strength? More assisted exercises? Since the summer mountaineering season is done, I've been doing your 3 sets of 8 program, and I'm thinking of doing Wender's 5-3-1. Ben's 29, 170, and trained 5 days a week. Being 170, Ben, your presses are bad. Same advice I just gave. The Dick Notmeyer press outs. Whenever you get the bar overhead, these little teeny press outs to pull that scapula underneath. And I tell you, it'll also build those intercostal muscles, man. You're going to have fingers sticking at you. And the other one is add a little leg drive to some of them and bring them down slow. Pop up, slow down. Pop up, slow down. I got to tell you, it helped me immensely. I think your training programs look really good to me. I think if you're doing the 5-3-1 and some 3 sets of 8, you're doing everything I'd recommend. I'm just not sure you've given it the time yet. So maybe about 2 rounds of 5-3-1, maybe 3. Get back to me and let's see how that's going. Thank you. I gotta say, this has been a good series of questions. I've enjoyed this. I've got a question from Glenn with 2 N's. Can you give me your thoughts on one or more of the following questions? Glenn, you're getting all 3 today, okay? 1, most overvalued lift training methodology used in high school weight training. Most overvalued. Okay, I'm thinking you mean this. What is the thing we put too much time and energy into? One answer, it's the bench press. Bench press, arm work, waste of time. As I've noted on this before, I never program arm work or bench pressing for male athletes anymore because I know they'll do them. And I don't program stretching and ab work for female athletes because I know they'll do them. So, but the most overvalued, I would say, the bench. When people say, well, Dan, you always hate the bench, but it was in all your programs. Yeah, and the bench, the front squat, and a power lift they were absolutely part of every program. Because if you're in America and you want to have a happy weight room, you have to have the bench press. So it is kind of it's a dual thought there if you can hang on to both sides of it. The difference between boys and girls in this area. I taught an all-girls class, and I tell you, that was an eye-opener. That's where I really started pushing so I had a bunch of plastic cups in there, and my TA or my interns would fill them half with water. And we did those Turkish get-ups with the weight on the, so if you moved. And God bless them, I love women, my wife, my daughters, my granddaughter, my mother. But how do you say this nicely? Women like to talk to each other in the weight room, pretty much nonstop. They will be pulling a deadlift, maybe even a max deadlift, and turn to their friend and start saying things like, you know, this seems heavier than I thought it would be. And they'll still be pulling. The reason I did the Turkish get-up with the water cup is because if they talked or did something, the water would spill and get all over them. So that quieted them down. For boys, it's that constant peacocking that drives me crazy. But it is interesting that those two things. This is adolescent athletes. I'm sure it changes, and maybe I'm overselling the point. The biggest thing about the female strength athlete, especially in the high school setting, is the amount of volume they can handle doing leg work. You can do things like Bulgarian split squats and front squats and some other leg thing in the same workout, and they'll boom back in 2-3 days and be ready to do it again. When you get to the bench press, you're going to have to throw out all the numbers because women very often 5 pounds or 2-3 kilos less than their max they can do 10 reps with. So it's kind of that takes a while. So never try to use percentage programs in pressing with female athletes because it just doesn't work. One thing I will teach you if you do coach high school boys is you can never turn your back. This is rude that I'm about to say this, but it's funny. But I think training as a maximum security prison guard is excellent preparation for coaching high school because it is the same. You never turn your back because bad things happen. And I joke about it, and then someone will say, oh, you know what? One time I answered the phone and, just madness ensued 30 feet from now. When people would come to my room, I would walk backwards, and I'd just walk backwards because my eyes are always forward. So that was the thing. Boys can do stupid things at a clip that is absolutely frightening. So those are the two big differences. Okay, question number 2. Best way to train athletes to minimize risk for ACL knee injuries. Well, yeah, I'm stopped playing basketball. There you go. You're welcome. One of the things I do when athletes get injured in games is I always look at the film, if they have it. High school football has been very good about this. And you look at the film for the injury. Very often with ACL injuries in American football, there is no, it's physics, Here's your leg, here's someone who weighs 208 pounds, sprints into it, and your leg, instead of going, this way, suddenly goes this way, and that's, you break. I have been told, and I don't know if this is true, that little things like the little things that we used to have the triple jumpers do, where there's these, it's a W board on the ground. It's a W shape, so that you do some jumps with your feet this way, and you do some jumps with your feet this way to prepare your ankles and knees. I don't know. I would have a very gentle angle on those. I got an exercise from Taylor Lewis that I like a lot. So you're standing with your on your left foot only. You're gonna let your right leg swing away, and what you do is you take your fingers and you touch your shoelaces, and straighten back up. Take your fingers, touch your shoelace, straighten back up. Take your fingers, touch your shoelace, hold, come back up. All right. You'll notice the next day that your butt is really sore because it's a perfect hinge for most people. And then you would add a load to that. And I would not go crazy. I'm not a huge fan of heavy single leg deadlifts. But I think at some level, it would teach you the balance, which is going to help, and maybe help with the injury. Preventing knee injuries is, it's like, Dan, we do a sport, we break our fingers a lot. Well, don't do the sport, or whatever, okay. I hope that helps. Question number 3. What is a valuable lesson you learned training high school athletes? Well, there's about 1 million of them, but I got to tell you, there's nothing new under the sun. In my book Attempts, I talk about my brother Phil. I first wrote about it in my administrative newsletter in 1996, but it show up. The most valuable lesson I learned coaching them is, if you have an attendance sheet, the athletes that are at in a year period, 180, 200 visits to the weight room or the track or the field, those are the ones that are pretty good. Maybe not in the first year, but over time. And it's those same kids who showed up all the time in the weight room, the field, the court, whatever, are also the kids that 10, 20, 30 years later are very successful in life. One of my favorite things about coaching after all these years, so my first athletes was 1979. 1 or 2 of those guys are actually older than I am. I have a lot of athletes now who are in their late 50s, mid 50s. Is you get a chance to see the lessons they learned about showing up and being in the zone carry on throughout life, and it's a marvelous thing. I've learned that you can almost pick the kids in life who are going to be really successful just by how they show up. And is it 100% accurate? Well, accurate enough. Glenn, kind of like those questions. I might have got confused on the first one, but that's good stuff. Thank you, my friend. Bye-bye. Well, that just about does it. Thank you for listening. Remember, if you have questions, email them to podcast@danjohnuniversity.com, and we'll do our best to get back to you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.